guys, Matt Lemke here with your Gamer Goggles, gamer-goggles.com, and today we have another flip through for you. This one's on Pathfinders Ultimate Magic. Some of you guys might be like, well, that's been out a while. Well, it is, but it's a new book to me. I just got it recently. Oops, I want to zoom in, not out. So it's going to be a little bit different from most flip throughs in the sense that some of the stuff I already know about, so I don't find it appealing. For example, the Magus. Something my son's been playing for 6 months to a year. He found the information online. He's been using it. So I've been letting him use it. So we're not going to talk too heavily about the Magus. There are cool things about the Magus as we flip through the book. Like, for example, that it was a new core class back in the day when this happened. It was also, pretty much right out of the box, it was the first ever balanced or semi-balanced core class fighter, magic user / sorcerer type of character that you got that you didn't have to build on your own. It should be no surprise that Ultimate Magic is, of course, about magic. But with that said, we're going to move right into some of the archetypes. And, there's a couple things that stood out to me that I didn't realize were there. I GM a good bit of the time. I mostly GM for friends that are still playing 3.5. I am running a Pathfinder campaign, but those are all new players. So things like, for example, the bards in Ultimate Magic receive masterpieces, which I thought was cool. They're kind of like a feat. They basically, in addition, increase your bardic performance, basically, is what you do. The other thing that I thought in archetypes that was really neat, because, well, I have a large martial arts background, so that is a great picture, by the way. One thing I did notice about this book, because most of the books I've been doing flip-throughs on, is that there's not as much art in the older books. The Inquisitor, but the Monk. There's a couple new... Oh, well, of course, there's different aspects for the Magus as well, which, of course, since they just integrated the Magus in this book, there should be archetypes, right? So with the Monk, there's different things that they kind of focus on the magic as being the key, or chi if you're a Chinese practitioner, as the magic-like powers. So there's an archetype for the Qigong, or if you're a Chinese practitioner, my background, I would call it Qigong. And then we move into the Oracle. Now, of course, there's other things in this book that by now most of you are aware of, or even if you aren't aware of them, you probably have heard of them and just don't realize where they come from. One of the things Ultimate Magic does is it introduces a lot more sonic magic to the spells. The other thing that they do is they have this little section on mastering magic, which has a whole bunch of different things. One of them is spell blights, which is basically sicknesses that you can get from casting spells or being around spells that have failed, or however you as a GM really wish to pull it off. Their guidelines are a little bit more specific than what I did, but I would have fun abusing this with the broadness of my imagination. So basically, it's like the blights. We talked about blights not too long ago in, I think it was Horror Adventures. And it's the same line. Actually, this is probably where they kind of got the idea for that, since this was made, gosh, when was this book made? 2012? So it's been around a while. So spell duels. I like spell duels in this because they kind of give you that feel of a Wild West kind of happening. And basically, with a spell duel, it pretty much works just like combat, except that it's a little bit more focused on the wizards being one-on-one. Think of it like knights on the battlefield, or knights in a medieval fair, jousting and then getting off and dueling with their swords. It's basically that same type of concept, but primarily for spellcasters. And then there's a section on summoning, which I kind of stayed away from a little bit just because of the fact that I don't really play summoners, and none of my players are right now. So I don't need the extra knowledge. Now after that, somewhere... Oh, there's this cool chapter on spellbooks too. It requires a little bit more maintenance, but I'm a fan of spellbooks and some of the things that you can do with them. And you can use your spellbooks as for like ritual magic, which with one of my GMs has been a thing. So one of the reasons why I actually picked up this book was designing spells. Now, this has some interesting sections to it, and the first is, the golden rule. Unlike pricing magic items, there's no real formula for this. So to correctly price a spell, you have to do some different things. And one is like use the core rulebook as your guide. Then it talks about knowing spell terminology. You should have a plan for the level, and you should have a real good idea of the function. Spell damage, of course, it's all kind of highlighted here step by step for creating your spells. One of the things that I really found as being cool, well, they also talk about spell resistance, casting time components in the school, but one of the things that I found that was really cool about this section of the book is right at the end. Well, okay, before I get to that part. Multi-purpose spells are spells that give you multiple options, obviously. And they talk briefly about that, but I think you need to read between the lines a little bit because it's real easy to break those multi-purpose spells if you're creating them. Now, I've never used these guidelines yet, but I know from experience that I've had problems with players breaking the spells I've created. And then there's a small section on choosing the descriptors. Benchmarks. This is really cool. At least I thought this was a really cool section because it goes through all this, well, not all spells, but it goes through the caster levels or spell levels, one at a time, and it gives you the benchmarks for spells, and these are like the best of the best. So at first level, Burning Hands, it's the benchmark spell. Then Magic Missile is perhaps the best level spell in the first level spell in the game, and then so on. Now, these are all things we know, but I think what's kind of cool about this is there might be some that you don't necessarily think of as being really good. For example, the third level spell Suggestion, I think at third level tends to be overlooked. Or at fifth level, Dominate Person, I think, tends to be overlooked. Wall of Stone, great spell. Everybody knows that. Benchmark? I don't know if you'd have thought that. And why? So why am I going on and on about these benchmarks? Well, because this is one of those things that you get a rare look at the designer's thoughts and thought patterns as to what their key components are within their game. So the guys who make the game are telling you these are among the best spells out there. So as a GM or as a player, they're giving you inside information on something. They're not necessarily giving you the application, but they're giving you something. And of course, there's a plethora of feats, and there are a couple. Let's see, wait, where is it? Before we get towards the power, the feats are really cool because, well, I should have marked it, and I didn't. Within this book, one of the things that's really cool is you can take things, and I'm not sure, maybe it wasn't a feat, maybe it was a special ability, but you can take something that basically replaces some of the feats. So let's say you want to make constructs. It usually takes like 3 feats. But let's say your character only wants to work with flesh columns. There's a way through this book using feats and powers to be able to do that. Now, what Ultimate Magic does do is it introduces the power of words with word magic. Or words of power, I should say. And this is kind of the idea of things like, one word types of things that kind of do things, or like fade. I mean, it's not as, at least I didn't see disintegrate in here or power word kill like from way back in the day of 3.5. Yeah, 3.5. Dungeons and Dragons first and second edition. But these power words, you can build a whole character class around them effectively. So, right here it talks about words of power in the world, and they represent a primal form of magic used in ages past. I can easily see sorcerers using this, or clerics using this, because, well, clerics get their power from divine beings, right? And sorcerers get their powers from, well, all over the place. Which is something else that this book did, is it introduced new ways for you to play the sorcerer. Again, that's not something that I was going to delve into, because it's not something I do a lot of. Now, I'm not going to say there's a plethora of spells in this book, but there's a lot of newer spells in this book that prior to this book you hadn't seen. Since then, with the internet as a resource and things of that nature, you may have found them. And what I was surprised about, there you go, there's a cool picture too. What I was surprised about in this book is that there's little to no, well, there's actually like no magical items, no equipment in the book. But you have plenty of new magic. So, Ultimate Magic. Well, I bought it as a tool, as a GM. And I believe that it was well worth the purchase. I think I wish there was more detail on the creating spells section, designing spells, but I'm going to be a little bit, lackadaisical with that judgment, because the book was written 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, that might have been just about right for where we are. I think Pathfinders evolved quite a bit from some of the stuff that's in this book. I'm not saying that designing spells is obsolete. I'm saying that I think maybe they should go back and revisit it and expand upon what they've already published. I think that's where we're at with Ultimate Magic on some of this stuff. I'm a fan of spell duels. I am a bigger fan of some of the archetypes in here. My son is going to be very happy to realize now that we own the Magus, or the book with the Magus in it. So thanks for watching, guys. This should post while I'm at Gen Con if I do everything right. And I hope to see you guys there. Talk to you later.